relationship with your co-founders? Like, do you know them, past the last couple of weeks or months? And 3, given the amount of time that you've been working on your product, what have you gotten done? And I think that like this last one is very important because I think founders want to feel like there's a static moment you can get into YC. Well, if I get this grade on this test, I get into YC. If I get this number, I can get into YC. And the reality is it's a sliding scale based on how long you've been working. I talked to one founder specifically who was like, Michael, I feel like you're moving the goalposts on me. Every time I talk to you, it feels like it's harder to get into YC. And what I tell him is, well, we talk every 6 months. Every 6 months, I expect you to do more than what you did in the last 6 months. He finally came to understand what that meant. So I think that, at the high level, if you're doing those things, you have a good shot at getting into YC. The last thing, you don't have to know anybody. You shouldn't be thinking that applying more than once is bad. Shola, you guys applied, was it twice?
Yeah, twice.
Yeah. So like, there's a lot of myths and lore around getting into YC and all of the weird things you have to do. And like, almost none of it is true. And most of it is like talked about by people who didn't get into YC. So don't believe any of that bullshit. All right. For the interview part, Shola, how did you first hear about YC? Like, when did it even get on your radar?
Oh, wow. I think 2006. So welcome, everyone. My name is Shola Akinlade, the co-founder and CEO of Paystack. Paystack is a payments company. We help merchants accept payments from their customers. I have to say that before I start talking. All right. So now that we've checked that box. Yeah, so I think mine is actually very funny, and I think I told you, Michael, I've actually been on Hacker News since like 2006, so I had been following like Paul Graham, like everybody, just like understanding startup culture. So I think
that means you're getting old, Shola.
I'm 35.
Oh my God.
I look 35 though, which is really cool.
You're a young 35.
Yeah. I missed my opportunity to get into Forbes 30 under 30. But it's fine. Yeah. So I think, and surprisingly, I actually did apply for YC for my first company in quotes, in 2007. It was like an open source version of Dropbox. So I did that. We didn't get in, obviously. And so 2015, when I was about to like start Paystack, of course I had to apply for YC. So I guess.
Well, break that down for me. Like, we were not funding a lot of companies from Africa back then. Why did you think you could get in?
Because, well, I didn't think I was going to get in Leicester from there. Because I didn't have options, and I still say today that even in 2015, if YC didn't really fund Paystack, I would have been like, I don't know who would have funded Paystack, so I didn't have options. I was like, I just have to try my luck. I guess one of the things I hear a lot at YC is that founders have to be very, very resourceful. So it was just me being resourceful, me just trying to like figure out how to like move forward. Yeah.
Okay. So you apply. What happened the first time you applied?
What the first time in 2015, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
By the way, I have your 2008 application right up here in front of my screen.
Oh, wow. Please just close it.
Yeah, the first time in 2015, what happened?
Yeah. So I think 2015 was good because I wasn't even planning to apply. Well, I wanted to apply, but actually I did apply now that I remember. It's been a long time. I applied for YC fellowship actually because I think there was YC fellowship and the real YC. I applied for YC fellowship then. And then I think I was just talking to my friend, I don't know if it's on this call, about like YC fellowship and all. And I remember one day just sent an email and copied like all the YC partners and said, hey guys, Stripe is not in Africa, but there's this guy's building Stripe for Africa. Please talk to them. Shola is the founder, And you picked up that email with one line and you said, you know what, tell me more about Paystack. I was like, what am I going to say? So I spent like 5 hours trying to like compose the message. I guess it worked out. And so I responded, and then I just got a lot more one-liners. And at the end of that, you just said, you know what, just submit your application, it's fine, or something like that. And that was that. Unfortunately, we didn't get into YC Fellowship. We got like, I just got an email that you were close, but you didn't get in. And so that was that. And then I think the other YC application opened up. And I think a week before it closed, I got an automated email that said, you know what, you applied the last time, you didn't get in, try your luck again or something like that. And then I tried the second time. And I think I just went through that process. Yeah.
I'm literally, so I have an email up from, let's see, August 11th, 2015.
Oh, wow.
Where OO introduced us. Paystack makes it easy for Nigerian and eventually African businesses to accept payments online. So the talk hasn't changed in 5 years. That's a consistent one-liner. Okay, so you apply first time, you don't get in, you get this email to apply again. Yeah. By that time, had you raised some money? What was the status of the company by then?
Money? No, nothing. But I think in that process, we started we started a pilot.
Okay.
So and some of the very interesting things that we did, which I don't even know if you knew, was like I was working with a company called Gingerbox. They were supposed to like be my first pilot customer, but the website developer wasn't like moving fast enough. So I just said, you know what, just give me access to the website. Let me build the website for you. I just like connected and all that, And so I did that because Gingerbox, they do fruit deliveries, monthly, daily fruit deliveries. And so they needed Paystack to work. So I just like, you know what, let me just do the website. So I built the website, connected Paystack to it. And so before the second application, I think we already started like a pilot. Real customers were using it. The good part also was that I think Gingerbox was in a Nigerian accelerator. I think it was called 440.ng or something like that. And so he told his friends about it. And a lot of them started reaching out to me. And so I had already started piling up like a wait list of merchants. So I guess in that period, I guess 2 months, we had gone live and we had started like a pilot.
So the difference between your first application and your second application was in your first application, I'm reading the reviews now.
Wow.
It seemed like the comment was like, founder seems good, but nothing is there.
Oh, wow.
Nothing's been there. The second application, still like the founder, has 13 pilots and some revenue.
Oh, wow, nice.
And then in the interview, well, how do you think the interview went? So you get invited for an interview.
It was too fast.
What did you think?
Yeah, so I like that. The interview story is very funny because, we had to fly to San Francisco, Silicon Valley. And so we got in and we were like, you know what? We were really worried about our accent. Like I was worried about my Nigerian accent. Like, I don't know if that will go through. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's go test it. So we went, I came the day before the interview. Our interview was like on a Wednesday. So we went to YC on like a Tuesday. And then we met people there and I was like testing it with people. And after like pitching Paystack to them, I was like, did you understand what I said? They were like, oh yeah. Like I thought you went to University of Washington or something. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, good. So I think like, but we were very nervous about our accent and thought maybe it might have been difficult to like pass the message across. I don't think that was a problem. But when we got into the interview, it was you, Justin Khan, and I think Caroline. And it went very, very fast. It was 5 minutes. I can't remember. Like I tried to cram the first one line, but all that didn't work, But ultimately, it was. I think I remember. Actually, I still remember what I crammed. I was like, you know what? We're building Paystack. We had like improve the payments experience. Something that takes 7 steps now takes 3 steps. And as I was talking about it, you said show us. I'm like, oh wow, we have to show you. And so I think Ezra brought out like the laptop, and then we tried to do a demo, and then we did that demo, and then you asked more questions.
Well, and didn't you show us the old way? Didn't you show us what who was that old competitor that had an online payment product?
InterSwitch.
Yeah, didn't you show us the InterSwitch?
Yes.
Flow?
Yeah, because
yes.
The merchants we tested with had 2 payment flows. So we showed you the other flow and then showed you their new Paystack flow. And the Paystack one looked better, I guess.
So in your second in your interview, you got 2 strong yeses. So me and Justin. And let's see, Justin said, good energy. This seems like a problem in Nigeria right now. They have a wait list of customers and fast growing market, and I want to work with them.
Listen.
I said, I like it. The structural challenges preventing Stripe from getting in. The founders know each other. Being a US company is going to help them raise. Good progress. Yeah. So it was actually, it was a pretty easy decision second time around. Okay. So you'd been following YC since 2006.
Yeah.
You guys are now in YC.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about 1 or 2 things that you expected that turned out to not be that way at all?
Wow.
How did you think YC was going to be versus how it ended up being?
Yeah. I thought it was going to be like school, like, and the professor was going to be Professor Michael Seibel, but it wasn't like that. It was the opposite actually, because any question I asked, Michael would just say, "What do you think?" Like, yo, I was asking the question, you know, and so I think the first part of it was just like the way the mentorship and the advice came was actually very different from what I had experienced all my life, you know. Also, just coming from Nigeria, I think historically, like the kind of advice I used to get was really a lot of people just telling me what to do, why they thought we should do it, why we'll never be successful. You know, like it was very, very like direct, just throwing advice at us. And I think the YC process was more like, you know what, we're here to help you. Like, figure out how to use us to get what you want. You know, we're not going to like call you up. We're not going to ask you questions. You're just going to like be there for you, and you think of us as a third partner. And so that was very, very helpful, and really, really made it at some point. So I think the first office hours I had, like a lot of my questions, the answer was like, you know what, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. So I think towards the end, I started getting good at asking better questions because I didn't want all my answers to be, it doesn't matter, you know? So, so I think that was really, really, really cool. Yeah, so I think so. So to answer the question, the first difference for me was just how the nature of the engagement wasn't as like direct as I was thinking, and it was more complimentary. So I think that was the first part. I guess that is it. And then maybe the second part of it was also how at scale, I didn't know how it was going to work with 100 companies from different places and all that. But I think it ended up being very, very effective, even though like I would just meet the founder on Tuesday and we would speak for just 1 hour. But some of those people are still people I still like feel like I still keep in touch with if I need to keep in touch with them. So I think I didn't expect the level of like, I don't know, the community. I didn't know what to expect about the community, and I think the community turned out to be very, very different from what I expected.
Can you be a little bit more detailed there? Why do you say that?
Yeah, I said that because like, again, like school, like there's so many people and everybody has their own journey, you know? So I wasn't really expecting a community. I wasn't, I know, and I had heard it before the YC process that, you know what, this is a community of founders figuring out things together and all that. But I wasn't thinking about it in that direction. But in reality, it ended up being very useful, even like getting intros to investors, book face, like passive learning. You know, I call it passive learning because like someone is figuring stuff out and they're like sharing what they figured out. And I'm looking at it and I don't understand what they're saying. And then 2 years later, I have that problem. And then I remember I saw this problem 2 years ago, you know? So I think just that passive learning has been super, super useful in the community, yes.
Talk to me about your relationship with your co-founder, Ezra, during YC. How did you guys change, develop as a team? You know, you're now living in Silicon Valley for 3 months. How did that whole thing go?
Yeah, it was good. I think the good part is, we've been friends. Like I'd known him since 2002, so probably about 14 years before YC. We had lived together in 2007 for like maybe 6 months in the same house. Okay. So that was also good. Surprisingly, we diverged. Like we were no longer friends. We were not friends for like 5 years, and then came back together again. So at YC, we had to live together. So, but thankfully, like both introverts, like we just like everyone in their room. So I think that part was fine. On the working relationship, I think it was very good. I had like spent the first year building Paystack myself. And so I was trying to hand over to Ezra, and so Ezra was probably building the new version of Paystack, and just owning like the technology vision and all that. And so that was really, really helpful. And so my role started evolving from like a technology person to just talking to customers, and just doing what needed to be done. And so I think, and he made it very easy because he's also like, he understands what we're trying to do and all that. So I think just that shared journey of, you know what, both of us are trying to figure this out, was very helpful. And I think it brought us together. We didn't have any like, I don't think we had any problems during YC, which was good. Yeah, and sometimes I think the good part is like, it was a good cook. I was a terrible cook. So we didn't have to worry about who was going to cook. That was very easy, you know, so I did a few more things. So I think it was a very complimentary relationship.
So last subject within the YC frame, talk about fundraising. You know, I can share on my side.
Yeah.
I was not confident when we accepted you guys that Silicon Valley investors wanted to fund a company operating in Nigeria. I didn't know that was something that they were willing to fund. And you guys in many ways were a test case, because I didn't think we were going to see a company as good as you guys coming through regularly. So for us, it was like, if this works, good. If this doesn't work, oh shit. So how did you experience it?
Well, I'll tell you a secret. When we got the 120K from YC, we were like, you know what? This is all the money we're ever going to have. You know, so we're going to build this company on 120K. Like, that is it. So I think that was the first part. So we also didn't have a lot of expectations, and we were happy. Like, we had a plan to build the company on 120K. So that was good. And then just before demo day, we started getting, I think you actually made an intro to Comcast Ventures. And so that call ended up being a very good call. They didn't make a decision, but I liked the call, so that was good. And then a few investors from Nigeria had already heard that we were in YC, and they were also like very excited about what we were doing. So I think getting into demo day, I was slightly more confident, you know. And YC had told us don't raise money. So I'm like, okay, no, we're not raising, like after demo day, we'll come back to you. But I had a few people. And then on demo day, we had to talk to maybe a room of about 700 people and just share the Paystack vision and all that. And so we did that. I had about 40 people say they were interested. I started following up. And I think it was positive. So I probably did about 60 meetings. I got maybe about 40 no's, which is a lot of no's, but I got about 20 yeses. And so in like 3 weeks, we had about 720K. We wanted to raise about 1 million. In about 3 weeks, we had about 720K. And I just
At what price? Were these Nigerian prices?
No, exactly. Okay, so let me be very real here. When I told you I was talking to Nigerians, YC told us to like do this at like $10 million valuation. And then when I spoke to some investors from Nigeria, they're like, you know what? No, you can't do that. Like, that's too expensive. Let's do it at 5 or 3 or 2, you know? So I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me just respect myself. Let me do that 5. You know, let me do the first 1 million at a 5. And then it's fine. Like, let's see how it goes. So we started at 5, and mostly because we just wanted to like be very, like, I don't know, we just wanted to do it that way. So we started at 5. And then when we got to 1 million, we just increased it to maybe about 7.5. Yeah.
So before we go to questions, I think that you have an interesting vantage point because both by talking to founders and by looking at their businesses on Paystack, I think you have an interesting view on the entire ecosystem. So imagine we kind of switched roles for a second here. What are the 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would give a Nigerian founder who's trying to build a great business? And maybe you can start with, what are the 2 to 3 most common mistakes that you see people making? And whether you kind of use your founder brain, like when you're talking to founders, or when you're looking at them launching their products on your platform. You know, what special insights do you have?
Yeah, I would say the first one is really a lot of focus. I think, I don't know why. I've heard that Lagos is very entrepreneurial and all that. And I think that makes people want to do so many things. And I'm just like, yo, why are you doing so many things? Like, one is already difficult, you know, why? You know, so I think, and one of the things you told me actually was that this is going to take like 7 years. And you're going to have to like hustle it every day for a long time, you know? So I think the first mistake is founders just trying to like have like a complicated plan that involves multiple ideas. And if you can just keep it simple, but keep it like courageous, like there are very big problems you can solve every day for the next 7 years and not think about solving any, like for example, we just talked about how the Paystack vision hasn't changed. And I don't even see it changing anytime soon. Like there's still so much to do, you know? So I think just being super, super courageous and picking a very big problem and knowing that you're going to spend a lot of your life solving that problem is the first one. And then maybe the second thing is progress. I think, again, a lot of people don't know how to measure progress, you know. Some people think progress is that, oh, I don't know, I don't want to use examples, but I think progress is every week growing more than you were. Like if you were doing 5,000 last week, do 7,000 next week. You know, if you didn't have a product last week, have a product this week, you know. So founders thinking about incremental progress. And it is something that I've also seen that people struggle with. When I talk to founders and I ask them, what are you working on this week? Or maybe like, what are you working on? Like they talk about it a lot, but when I say, what are you doing this week? A lot of people struggle to like articulate what they're working on in the next 1 week. Like, what am I going to do next week that will take me closer to my goals? You know, so having a very clear sense of how to make progress is something I think people should hopefully figure out. Yes.
Well, and I think that part's interesting because I think that there's certain places that you can kind of absorb information about the startup world, TechCrunch, you know, so on and so forth, where I think people's mental model is, I come up with an idea, I raise money, and then I build product. And, you know, you guys were different, right? Like you guys didn't have that mental model. How did you started with, I build product and get customers, and then I try to get investors, which worked very well. How did you avoid the trap of, I need money to make this thing work?
Yeah, I think half of it was because this was a personal problem we were trying to solve. this was like a personal mission. Like we had, and this I can speak for Ezra too. We had seen Stripe from afar. We had seen PayPal. We had seen companies build amazing payment experiences. And we've like always wondered, like, why can't we do this? And so for us, I think we were more of craftsmen. Like we just wanted to build stuff. We just wanted to get it done because that was where the pain was from, you know? So I would say, firstly, it wasn't necessarily about like, oh, we want to like raise money, do this, do that. No, we wanted to build stuff. We knew we could build it. And we just wanted to do that. So I would say that was the first part. The second part of it was, I also had a lot of pressure. You know, I had a lot of pressure between like, can we go big very fast? Can we start talking to the very big enterprises? Can we talk to governments? Can we do that? Or can we just work with the startups, you know? And I had to make a decision to say, you know what, at least in the short term, in the early days, and I also, I don't know, I read a lot of YC stuff, you know, there's something I read and they said, you know what, it was better for like few people to love you than for like a lot of people to like you, you know? And so I switched. And so my mental model then was, you know what, let's like focus on getting 5 or 10 people to love Paystack. Like let's build for the people that are asking us versus us going to super enterprise and begging people to use Paystack and building custom tools for them. Let's like the people that are calling us and saying, I had a customer, it's called Jekalo. It was building like Uber, like a ride sharing platform. And it was saying, you know what, I don't care if, and I told him I don't have settlements. I won't be able to pay you your money. He was like, no, don't worry, don't pay me. Just like collect the money for me. Like I need the business as well, you know? So I'm just like, how do I leave someone like this and start chasing other things that I don't know how long it would take, you know? So our mental model was very simple. Also, I spoke to my lawyer. I said I wanted to register a company that was DIY law. And they were like, oh, we're actually building a tool like Clerky. We need payments. I'm like, oh, come use Paystack, you know? So I think the early days, I had so much people around me that wanted it. And it made no sense to like aspire to do any other thing. Yeah, so we spent the first 3 months just like working with people that were in our space and just trying to make them happy. It ended up being a very good decision because we started building a strong reputation. And when I went to a bank to talk to them, like the number 3 man in the bank was telling me that his wife used Paystack 3 months ago and she really liked it for a small store. You know, I'm just like, oh, so no need to talk too much again, you know? So I think it ended up working well.
So I can't communicate this enough. Like, we didn't teach Shola and Ezra this stuff. Like, I never sat down. We didn't have a call before this call where I told Shola, say these things. Like, we fund founders who are going to do this company no matter what, and who are going to be resourceful and extraordinary no matter what. And, you know, sometimes, you know, when I think about how YC works, the reason why we lean back and we say, tell us what you need and we'll help you, is because when you work with extraordinary people, your number one goal is to not get in their way. Your number one goal is to do no harm. And so I want to leave this kind of thought and feeling with you before we go to questions. We didn't make Paystack extraordinary. We didn't make Shola and Ezra extraordinary. They were extraordinary. We just helped a little bit. And like, if you're going to do something really big, getting into YC is kind of irrelevant, right? Like, you know, Shola can speak to, there are a bunch of people in his batch that didn't make it. And so I just want to make sure that you're reaching, like, if you think about where you should be reaching in order to be a successful founder, you should be beating Shola. You should hear this and you should say, I got a couple moves Shola's not even heard of. That's the bar, right? You should be thinking like, Shola, that's okay. That's okay. That's good. That's a B+. I can do better. That's where your mind should be. And I'm fully confident that there are people who are better. I mean, Shola's better than me, I'm fully confident that there are people in this room that are better than both of us. But we're not going to make you that way. Like, that's not on us. Before we go to questions, Shola, I know you're a private company. There are only some numbers that you can share, but what are the numbers you can share? It's been 5 years.
Yeah. This is going to be very, very funny. When on our YC interview, you asked us and said, how much were we processing? And I was very shy. I said $250. I was hoping you would hear, or you would hear 250K or something. I said $250. Last month, we probably did over $150 million. So it's just, the scale has been crazy. Yeah.
Well, I will take all the credit for that. So,
yeah.
All right, let's do some questions. All right, I'm going to read some questions from chat. If y'all have questions, just put them in chat. I'm going to kind of move around and find some good stuff. So this is an interesting question. Shola, you had no expectation that we knew anything about Africa, West Africa, Nigeria. Like, what was your assumption on what you had to educate us for us to even be interested in your business?
Yeah.
And not just YC, also when you were pitching other investors who weren't from the region.
Yeah. I think our business was very simple. And so we just had to say, we're building Stripe for Africa. And so I think that really, really helped us. I think that's the first part. The second part was, and that is something that we actually struggled with. We didn't struggle with YC, but a lot of investors said no because they would ask and say, you know what, how much is the online payments market in Nigeria? And we would say $35 million monthly. And a lot of them would say, that is so small. You can't build a big business with that. And so we were trying to tell them it was growing fast, or it didn't exist because there was no Paystack. Like, it's like a chicken and the egg, but I guess some people got it. Some people didn't get it. Now Paystack is doing 4 times what Nigeria was doing before we launched. So that is really cool. But I think those were the 2 things. I think the first one was just finding a very simple parallel so that we didn't have to talk too much. We didn't have to explain, just like Stripe, but for Africa. And of course they will ask, why won't Stripe come to Africa? And we might say, you know what, payments is so fragmented. There's so many payment channels here. The things our merchants care about, I wonder how soon Stripe will be able to give it to them. And we think we can give it to them faster. I would say that. And so that was the first part. And then the second part was just the size of the market. And I think one thing that really worked out was just letting people know that there are 1 billion people in Africa. And there's a lot of commerce happening, and there's still a lot of friction. And so whoever figures out how to reduce that friction, at some point is going to be successful.
We'll talk about that. A lot of companies feel a little bit afraid pitching themselves as this for Africa, right? Yeah. They think, that's too broad.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, why did you guys embrace the whole continent from day one, even though you were really only operating in Nigeria when you were applying?
Yeah, I think the problem, we knew that the problem was a Pan-African problem, it wasn't as if it had been fixed in other places and it was just, so that's what we knew was a Pan-African problem. But we also knew that our execution would have to start from where we had worked, where we had experience. And Nigeria was a very big market. So of the 1 billion people I was saying, Nigeria probably has 20%, 200 million. So why not just start from Nigeria? So I would say, but we were not afraid to say that. We think and we still think it's a very big problem across the continent. We still think Paystack is the company that will fix it. And we're just making our progress step by step.
Well, I think that's a good note for companies that are operating inside of Africa. It's your job to convince the investor the market's big. Sometimes we'll see somebody and they'll pitch, we're just going to build this for this country, this for South Africa. And South Africa isn't a big enough market. I think US investors have this feeling like Nigeria is a very large market and all the other markets are small. And it's interesting because I think that like a lot of founders from Kenya and East Africa run into this all the time, where they're like, oh, East Africa is just as big of a technology hub as Nigeria. But the problem is the Nigerian founders can say we have 200 million people. And in East Africa, you've got to combine a couple of countries. You have to understand how those countries interact with each other. US investors don't understand that shit. Blah, 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 blah. Investors are like, just Nigeria. And then South Africa is even worse because on one hand, it looks like a big country, but on the other hand, it doesn't have that many people. And like the percentage of people that are actually engaged in the economy are not that big, like who are actually moving the economy. So just saying South Africa doesn't work either. So I actually think that this was a really good insight from the beginning. If you're gonna just say Africa, it doesn't matter where you're starting. like if your vision isn't wider than a single country, I think that you're playing into that investor thought that like this isn't gonna be big. Also, by saying Africa, it's funny, like we wanna hear courageous goals. Like we want to hear people who want to do outsized things. It's okay for your initial MVP to be small, structured, strategic. But like when we ask, hey, what can this be? We don't want to hear, oh, it can be this little tiny thing. We want to hear your grand vision. And so starting by we're doing this for Africa kind of sets that tone, which can help overcome an investor's thought of, is this going to be a big market? All right, other questions. Let's see here. So I'll reformat this slightly. If you were to extract out the 3 biggest insights that drove Paystack's growth over the last 5 years, and I'm going to give you a high bar to meet. So somebody asked Jeff Bezos, what are the 3 things that are going to change in the next 10 years about Amazon? And Bezos had this amazing reply. He's like, I actually don't think the things that are going to change matter very much. I think it's the things that are going to stay the same. And there are 3 things that everyone's going to want. As much variety as possible, lowest prices as possible, fastest delivery as possible. So I promise you that Amazon 10 years from now will still be trying to do those 3 things. What do you think of those 3 things for Paystack?
Yeah. Yeah, you said it was a very high bar. I think, but that said, we actually do have an opinion on that. I think for me personally, my 3 things are, number 1 is talent. I think that, especially just looking at me and like how average I am, I think the way we win and the way we've won is by finding great people and helping them do great work. Because I think if you do that and you just do it, like it just makes everything easier. And it has worked for us today. We built a team. We have about 120 people, a very diverse team from about 13 countries. And everyone is just doing it because this is what they consider their life's work. And so if you are like very careful about choosing your team, and we've seen this in like the superhero movies, like how they choose all of them and bring everybody together. Like if you just pay extra attention to choosing your team and make sure you have the right people, I think it counts for something. So I think that's the first thing that has helped us. The second one, surprisingly, is very, very focused on powering and empowering businesses. I think there's so many businesses that have not been built in the continent. When we started Paystack, it's very funny. If you look at the Google Play Store today, if you look at the top 10 apps in finance that are not banks, they're all powered by Paystack. And they didn't exist 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So I guess our thesis, or the way we think about it, is that there's so many amazing people building for the continent. And all we need to do is just to make it easy for them to start and scale their businesses. All we need to do is just to be that platform and just empower them, So I think, so firstly, talent, just being very intentional about talent has really helped us. Number 2, being very intentional about helping people start and scale their businesses and being that company that is powering the growth of the continent has been very helpful. And maybe just thirdly, I would just say this is very personal to me. It's just figuring out how to make payments work. Like, it's very simple. Unfortunately, I can't copy Jeff Bezos here. Like, I come from a country where payments don't work. I come from a country where when I travel from JFK to the airport, I'm like, shit, why is it so different? Like, why? You know, so a lot of the things that drive me is, but I know that payments, commerce, we can fix it. We can build something that works. We have so many questions and we can answer the questions. So I think for us, we just know that let's just make it work, which sounds very simple, but just making it work is big enough to help us and make us successful. So yeah, so making it work, finding the right people, and just empowering businesses will be my three things.
Great. There's another question here I thought was interesting. What are your thoughts on, and this is extremely common as there are accelerators that are popping up all over the world. What are your thoughts on participating in YC versus a more regionally focused accelerator that might have more specialized knowledge of the region?
Yeah. Okay, so I guess I have two answers. I wouldn't necessarily just say YC is the best. I would say just if you can go, I think my answer, especially if you're very early, is getting a fast decision and getting a simple decision. So if you can get someone that is willing to give you money as fast as possible at the simplest terms, it doesn't necessarily have to be YC. It doesn't have to be anything. As long as they're not taking like 20% of your company, 30%, blah, blah, blah. Or then like, just get simple terms and get your decision fast and move on. So I would say these are two things I think founders should optimize for. If you are lucky, well, not even if you're lucky, if things work, if you're building the right thing and things work out and you get into YC, I think that is really, really cool. But I would say that, which is strange because this is a YC call, but
Be honest.
But I would say really, really just make your own progress. Like, do what works for you. Get someone that's going to give you simple money, no comments and all that. Yeah, that's what I would say. But YC is really, really amazing. I think Paystack's trajectory changed when we got into YC. And that has been really, really amazing.
So let me give the, like, you know, aggressively pro YC super biased answer.
Yeah.
What I would say is this: I agree with almost everything that Shola said. I think that a lot of programs advertise expertise. I actually think in the early days, the number one thing that people can do is give you money, especially if money is the barrier that allows you to go full time or something. I probably would discount all of the advice and the expertise to almost zero and be happy if it's good. But if a local or regional accelerator can get you money, that really moves the needle. Now, with that being said, I think that Shola kind of hid a little bit, like, don't take a shitty deal. And like, I think probably the best way that you know that you're not taking a shitty deal is talk to some alumni. And just like some alumni who've made it, who've made some progress post accelerator, and just ask them, is there anything about the deal that you didn't like? Is there anything that's come back to bite you, or, you know, so I think that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that the majority of billion-dollar businesses didn't go through any accelerator. And so I really want to destroy this idea that you need to do an accelerator to be successful, because it's not true. And then the third thing I would say is that if I were giving up 7% of my company, and I've done this twice, I've given YC a chunk of my company twice. I care about track record, pure and simple. The way I think about startups is that you have such a small percentage chance of success. Why would you also risk some accelerator program that's also had no success? That seems to be like adding one small chance of success to another small chance of success. for me, if I could get money without doing an accelerator, I'd be thinking, I only want to go to accelerators that have massive examples of success. And I think there are 3,000 accelerators in the world, but when you start actually looking at the results, I don't think there are more than 10 accelerators in the entire world who have funded $1 billion company through their program, like out of 3,000. So like, I don't really think you should be shopping amongst 3,000. I think you probably should be shopping around amongst 10. Now, I think YC is doing pretty good on that. I think we have about 26 $1 billion companies, and Shola needs to fucking get to work so we can make that 27. It's like slow as shit. But, you know, that's kind of where I think this game is. But I'll reiterate what I said up top. If it's that initial chunk of money you need to get something done and you're not relying on the accelerator for anything else, then, you know, sometimes you got to get that money from wherever you get it from. And you'd be surprised at the number of startups that story is similar to Shola. Like, we made progress before doing YC. We raised a little bit of money before doing YC. We launched our product before doing YC. Sometimes people have the assumption that YC is like school, and if you're post-launch, you're like post-school. And that's just not true. All right, let's take some other questions here. Let's talk a little bit, you know, you spoke a little bit about ideas, and I feel like this common thing that's coming through that might not be highlighted enough. You are clearly passionate about payments. I don't know why, because payments are boring as fuck to me, but like you seem to be really excited by it, and really driven by the craft of it. And what's weird is that it shows, right? It doesn't feel like what you did was create a bunch of Excel spreadsheets, figure out that payments has got better margins and a better chance of succeeding than this other thing, and then choose payments because of it. Like, it seemed like you had a bit of an irrational interest in payments, and you built a company around that irrational interest. Talk to us more about that. Like, why do you give a shit about payments?
Yeah, I guess, again, like I said, just like struggling to pay. Like, my first company, I told you about it, we had to work with a company called Avangate. So I was building an open source version of Dropbox, and people would email me and say, you know what, this is open source, but my company can't do open source. So just charge us, send us a bill. And I couldn't do anything. Like, there was no option for me to send them a bill. Let's start from there. I'm like, whoa. And then I probably spent about 3 months trying to figure it out. I found a tool called Avangate, and then they sent me a card in Nigeria. And so people would like pay me or pay us. I would take the card to the ATM, I would withdraw cash, and then I would pay back in. So, you know, it's the problem was so personal that I'm like, why? Like, this is annoying, you know? I think that was the first part. And then just take it to the next level where I would want to pay somewhere. And I still have that problem, you know, you would go out and you have to ask them, oh, is your POS working? Is it working? Or you will try to make a payment and your money will go and it will come back and you've lost money and you can't, like, what are you going to do? You know, so I think it's just like accumulated pain for like 7 years. And I'm just like, you know what, the day I'm in the position to solve this problem, I'm going to solve it. So I would say that the payments problem was really just from like accumulated pain. Like, the pain was happening in different sides. And when I just stumbled on a way to charge a card via the MasterCard platform and it worked, I'm just like, oh, wow. Then we have to like lean in and figure out how to make it work. So I think that's what I would say. But yeah, like I said, I guess I just like, it depends. Yeah.
Amongst multiple businesses, or was this the business you were going to make?
Oh, so funny enough, I was doing two. Well, I would say before I stumbled on Paystack, I was going to build something like an expense management platform. That's what I was trying to build, which I still like, which is still tied to payment somewhat. But, and then while I was building that, I figured out that, oh, I could actually do the core payments infrastructure. And then I just like dropped that and focused on Paystack. So, which is the initial point I said about Paystack, about focus. Like, I didn't try to like combine both of them and do anything again, you know. Immediately I figured that, you know what, this payments opportunity might be something I can explore. I moved on to that and I went all in.
So here's a question that comes up a lot that I saw reflected in chat. And I love that I'm asking you this. Why do you think YC funds so many African fintech companies? What about all the other categories? Like, why are we funding so much fintech?
Yeah, but exactly. It's a wise question. My best assumption is that it's easy. I think financial services is just like a very big problem. One, like access to financial services in this continent is still very behind. But B, I think founders have just somewhat found it easier to like gain traction and clearly like articulate what they're doing in a way where if I was building something else, it might have been more difficult to like articulate it in a way where you can even relate with it. Yeah, so that would be my best guess. But I'm curious to your answer too, though.
You know, one of the things I've realized about fintech is that it is so closely related to the government and the country that it creates kind of a bit of a moat, right? If for a lot of other types of companies, it's a lot easier for them to be global by default. But like something like Stripe can't be global by default. They actually have to have something going in every country. And so I think that it creates a bit of a moat defensibility like that is helpful. And it was funny because I remember I was having this conversation with OO like 4 years ago. And I was like, you know, we keep on getting all these applications for like blank for Africa, like, you know, Spotify for Africa or YouTube for Africa. And OO was like, YouTube is YouTube for Africa. And Spotify is Spotify for Africa. Like these are not like regional products. And so I do think when it comes to finance and fintech, like it's a lot easier for homegrown solutions and a lot harder for global solutions. I think the other thing is that like payments, and Shola mentioned this, they're core infrastructure. Like if you can't accept money, if people don't have the ability to spend money online, the internet as a, you know, place where successful companies are built doesn't really happen. And so, you know, whenever we kind of operate in a market that's developing, our first thought are like, what are all the core infrastructure pieces? And like, you know, it's not a surprise that we have funded a Stripe for blank in India, Southeast Asia, Africa, Middle East. Like it's every region needs that to support the next generation of big companies. All right, let's see. Any other questions we can pull out here? You know, you mentioned the emphasis on team. There are a lot of non-technical teams that apply to YC with good ideas. And we reject a lot of them. And one of the things that I always think about is, from my position, no idea is unique. You know, in the last 12 months, we've gotten over 30,000 applications from around the world to YC. So the chances of me reading an application and thinking that's a unique idea is basically zero, like basically zero. Ideas don't surprise me unless you're like curing cancer, and then I'm not smart enough to even understand why your approach is unique. So that doesn't really do anything. But the thing that I always think about when I see an application from a non-technical team is that if this is a good idea, a strong technical team is going to attack the problem too. And can you beat them? And so you mentioned kind of building team, and I know that, you guys have built a ridiculously strong engineering culture in a place where a lot of people said there aren't a lot of good engineers. So how do you think about software being your core competitive advantage? Like, why did you decide to make software a core competitive advantage? Why not have, a 200 person biz dev and sales team? Like, why not specialize on that side versus software?
Yeah, I guess the simple answer is because I'm a software engineer. Yeah, so, but I think also that, again, I know we've talked about it a lot. I think the first part of the problem that needs to be solved is getting it done. And that's how we've always thought about it, like, let's get it done and then let's now get it out. So I suspect that for us, it has always been, and it's also about quality, because again, for Paystack to be successful, then we have to like be ridiculously like high quality, like it has to be excellent, So, and I think like the way we get it done is by finding people that can get it done. The advantage of software, which I would say is that, and this happened, it occurred to me maybe while I was building Paystack, that, what, we actually do have access to the same tools. Like there's no advantage, like if I was, I hope there are no like chemical engineers here or biochemists on this call, but if I was like a biochemist in Nigeria, for example, and people are like trying to fix a problem, like I would feel disadvantaged that, oh, there's someone in Oxford that can figure it out better than me, blah, blah, blah. They have access to like better tools. But like, I wonder if anyone, like I'm using a correct Mac, and it's not like I have access to the same internet. I have access to the same documentation. Like we're all using the same Stack Overflow. Like everybody's using the same thing. So I think software gives us that competitive advantage. And like nobody can claim to come at it better than us, So I think that is something that really like drew me to software. And especially because like I can't fight, like I don't have a lot of energy. So I just want to play in my zone, And even when we started Paystack and it started getting, and like you said, there was a time when, everybody was doing fintech, everybody was doing payments, everybody was doing everything, And I think you told me actually surprisingly that it is okay for us to have our own DNA. It is okay for us to be the company we want to be. Like, we don't have to be like other companies. Like, just do what you want to do, And so for us, and for me personally, I just said, what, to be honest, I still want to be known for being that company that has figured it out, that made it work, that is making it work, And yeah, so I guess all that combined is why we've like focused on like being a very strong tech company or product-led company. Yeah.
And I'm going to do a couple quick kind of YC related things, but to kind of round up this point, this is a secret advantage to getting into YC. So many of us, I'm a business guy, but so many of us who work at YC now, software was the reason why we won. The reason why Twitch was a $1 billion company was because we had a better software team than all of our competitors. And like that translated into, we were able to stream live video at like 10% of the price of all of our competitors. So our competitors raised more money, had more prestigious investors, had better biz dev, but we won. And so I do think something that everyone should take away here is that like what Shola just said is part of the culture and DNA of YC. Like YC is not a business school kind of MBA, solve it with deals type of culture. YC is the type of culture, it's like solve it with better software. And so I think sometimes this is what confuses people. And like, whenever we're on the edge about a company, this is a huge thing that can push us positive. Like, is this a company that can execute on software, that's excited about software, that wants to be the best software company in its space? Because from our experience, with good software development, even if you pivot, even if you change your idea, you can execute. With bad software development, if anything is misplaced, if anything is wrong, if any of your assumptions turn out to be not true, usually you just die. And so this is a great way to get in. Just really give a shit about software. Okay, so some quick questions about YC that I can wrap up. So one, the remote batch has been going great. Almost surprisingly so, I think. I think one, it's given us the opportunity to rethink a lot of parts of YC and make them better. Two, we've documented a lot more. So there's about 2 to 3 times more just of the information you might ask a YC partner is already written and already kind of online ready for you to read. And then I think the third thing is that the logistics of getting to YC for interviews and living on the Bay Area has temporarily removed. And so it's easier for companies to execute. We saw companies get more done because, you know, they're just sitting at their desk getting shit done. And so we're going to keep YC remote as long as, you know, for safety reasons, it should be. And then honestly, we're going, you know, once the safety reasons are over, we're going to rethink a little bit on how we run YC. And so remote's been going great. In terms of needing to know people, like the reason why we do these talks is to kind of give you what feel like the secret hints, right? The secret hint around like being really software forward, the secret hint around actually making progress between your applications, your secret hint that like you can apply at any time. These are the real things. Like everyone wants to think of YC like they think of other institutions where it's like, it's who you know. And like, I gotta be honest, like, it's just not. Like, and what's funny is that like, I wish Shola would send me more companies. Like, Shola barely sends me any companies, right? So the application is real. This isn't some fake process where like Shola's just feeding me the names that get into YC. And if you buy into that process, great. If you don't, great. You know, there are many other people who want those spots. What else really quickly? Patents, intellectual property, we don't give a shit about. YC applications are always open. Thank you, Femi, for answering that. And there's the other weird thing. Don't ask people about YC like around like things you can just read on our website, right? Like don't ask people like, oh, can I apply or not? Like just go to the website. It's like most of the basic logistics questions, most startup founders don't actually know the real answers to. And all the answers are just written on the website. So unlike other investor websites, which are basically useless in every way, like our website, we just write all the shit you need to know. And like, you'd be so surprised how many startup founders are out there, you know, playing themselves off as like YC experts and saying shit that's just completely not true that like is written differently on our website. So if you have questions around kind of the logistics of applying and any of that shit, just go to the website. Trust me, it's 10 times easier. And I think the last point I'll leave is like every single question I get that's like, will YC fund a company like X? I hate that question. Will YC fund a company from this region? Will it fund a company that's doing this thing? Will it fund a company that's doing this? If you go to our website, you go to ycombinator.com/companies, or you click the companies link at the top of the thing, we've now built this great UI, I'll share the link, where you can see everyone that we have funded. And you can split it by region, you can split it by type of company, you can split it by all kinds of things. So never disqualify yourself from applying to YC. That's silly. If you go to that list and you look around, I challenge you to find an industry we don't invest in, a region we don't invest in. Good luck. I challenge you. I challenge you to find some unique thing where we haven't made a single investment. And so if you're opting yourself out of YC, that's not a good look, right? If you get rejected, okay. But like, don't opt out yourself. And then here's the last thought. Oftentimes I meet companies who are not yet ready, or founders who are not yet ready to build great companies. I would kind of equate it, you know, in the US, I would basically equate it to, you meet a talented basketball player in high school who hasn't gone to the gym yet. So they're not strong enough for their position. You know, they're tall, but not strong enough for their position. They haven't trained, they're not running. And so they have the high level talent, but they haven't put enough work in yet to kind of build in the foundation. And oftentimes when I meet these founders, the answer is not to work on your startup right now. And that's a very hard piece of advice to give. That working on your startup right now is maybe not the best thing. Maybe the best thing is to go work at a company like Paystack and develop a network of engineers that are great. Maybe the right thing is to go work in the industry and develop insights. Maybe the right thing is to figure out how to, you know, if your product is not really specific to the region, figure out how to get out of the region. And so oftentimes the right step for your startup is not charge forward no matter what. Oftentimes it's like, take a realistic look at where you are right now and ask yourself, does spending a year or two doing something else better set you up to do this startup? Because like Shola said, this damn thing takes a long time. And like the foundation that Shola had was really vital to him being successful. And so I often tell founders, just be careful. Your job is not to succeed no matter what. Your job is to give yourself the best chance to succeed. And if it takes another year or two to get ready, that's fine. Because if you succeed, you might be doing this for 30 years. So in the scheme of things, an extra year or two to get ready, that's great. Also, most of the big problems aren't going anywhere. Most of the stupid kind of, you know, fad-based problems like, oh my God, how are we going to solve remote work? Or blah, 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 blah. Most of the shit that happens on VC Twitter is useless. But most of the big problems, right? Like if Shola hadn't come along, I don't know what online payments would have been like in Nigeria, but it would have been worse. So you shouldn't basically fear that the big problems are going anywhere. But you should have a really good foundation because any big problem has competitors. And you always have to ask yourself, like, what special advantage do we have to kill them? And I always like to be motivated by the competitor I don't know yet, who's doing things better than I am. I don't have a strong tech co-founder, they do. I'm fundraising and not building product, they're building product and launching. All the things that I know I should do, but I'm not doing, that shadow competitor is doing, and they're gonna beat me. And I better fucking match up, or else they're gonna beat me. And that's the thing that always motivated me to do all the things that I know I should do, but I don't. That's honestly the reason why we work so hard at YC, because there are 3,000 other accelerators out there. And if we don't bring the fire, one of them's gonna beat us. And like, we don't want any accelerator to be within 1,000 miles of us. So we make YC better every year. So I think I wanna, you know, leave you all with that thought that like, you can do this. YC is here to help. Don't self-disqualify, but make sure that you're doing something you're passionate about and make sure that you have a solid foundation. And if getting a job or doing something else for a year or two puts you in a better position, That's okay. I give you permission to spend a year or two prepping to do your life's work. In the scheme of things, that might be a year or two. That's very well worth it. You know, I actually think YC is my life's work, and it took me 8 years before I even got a job at YC. So, and I think I could be here till I retire. So that's the last thought I want to leave you all. And we're really excited that so many people are here, and really happy that Shola, you could take some time out of your schedule to come chat today.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks everyone. A few people sent me private messages. I'm sorry I couldn't follow. Yeah. So yeah. But thank you so much, Michael. Thank you so much, YC. Thanks, Paystack. Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. Bye.
See you later.